Hello and welcome back to the Elephant Lounge. I'm your host, Tuesday, and I want to thank you so much for joining me. Happy 4th of July or 5th of July, depending on when this podcast goes up. I have to tell you, it's going to be a long one, so get a snack or get some drinks or whatever. So strap yourself in. But if you hear some noise in the background or my poor cat meowing, you'll know why. It's because of the fireworks. I unfortunately made the poor decision to get into it with a Michael Jackson fan on YouTube. And the thing that just irritates me about Michael Jackson fans the absolute most, is their insistence on doubling down and lying every single time. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that I had somebody tell me they've read everything, they've read the trial, they've read all the books, they've read this and that, and then they proceed to follow up with a factoid that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that they never read anything and they certainly didn't read the trial. And I kept trying to tell this person, as I've tried telling Michael Jackson fans before in the past, I have repeatedly said to them, look, I have followed this for a very long time. I know a lot about this case. I know it very, very well. You are not fooling me. I've never seen you before. All these years I've been online talking about Michael Jackson, I have not seen you. I do not know who you are. Number one. Number two, you're telling me things that I know are not true. For a fact, I know that they're not true. You're trying to repeat all of the things that you've been told by the Jackson estate or by Jackson fans. They're not true. You are not fooling me. You're not fooling anybody. We both know that you're lying about this. So just please stop. And they proceeded to link me to a Michael Jackson fan blog, which is just ludicrous. And then they linked me to an interview with a reporter, a shameful reporter, who believes Sandusky is innocent and believes Michael Jackson's innocent. Now, when you're somebody who just continuously thinks that all pedophiles are innocent, something tells me something needs to be looked at with you. And this person is a conservative reporter, a right-wing conservative reporter. I am disgusted when I see people on the right, because I typically align with the right. I don't know what happened here. Obviously, it's not a political thing, but I am horrified that people on the right are actually falling for this Michael Jackson stuff. It's just very odd to me. It's very odd to me. Although there are people on the right that they fall for the conspiracy garbage too, that just drives me insane. But that's another topic. I'm just letting fans know. I know you don't know the facts. Because if you knew the facts, you would see what everyone else sees. You would see what we all see. I know you don't know these things, so just please stop. Just stop. You're wasting your time. You're not going to fool me. You're not going to fool anyone with this garbage. So this article that I found is in Vanity Fair. It's online. Of course, I will link it. It was published in March of 2004, so it's right before the trial. And it was written by Maureen Orth. And there's just some wonderful stuff in here that just confirms things that we know. Once again, just proves that Wade and James are telling the truth. We're going to get into this. I'm going to comment here and there. It is a long article. I might not read every single line, but we'll go over most of it. And like I said, it'll be a long one. So Michael Jackson refers to white wine as Jesus juice and red wine as Jesus blood. He prefers the juice and usually drinks it out of soda cans so that nobody will know he is consuming alcohol. In and out of rehab over the years for addictions to Demerol and morphine, the king of pop also habitually gulped down soda cans of wine, particularly when he was on airplanes. On on a flight to Frankfurt in 1999, for example, his former business advisor, Myung-ho Lee, and that's spelled Myung-Ho Lee. This is his former business advisor, and he's going to be a source for a lot of this article, so you want to make sure you know who he is. When I say Lee, I think his wife is mentioned in here as well. So Myung-Ho Lee accompanied him on this flight to Frankfurt. He had to help the staggering Jackson stand up to get off the plane. He was lying on the floor by the time we landed, says Lee. I told security you can't get drunk like that on white wine. And the security people said that it's not only white wine, but that he takes pills with it. The incident may be telling because in January, Michael Jackson was arraigned on 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent with intent to commit a felony. Between February 7th and March 10th of last year at Neverland, his 2,700-acre ranch near Santa Barbara, which he had converted into this mini Disneyland for kids, the boy in question in the case, a cancer victim who was 13 at the time, so we now know this to be Gavin Arvizo, alleges that Michael Jackson gave him wine and Coke cans on a flight from Florida in February 2003, right under the nose of the boy's unsuspecting mother. The boy knows Jackson's names for white and red wine. Now, Lee, he says the only people that know this are his inner people. And the boy and his siblings, they state that all the kids around Michael, they knew about the Jesus juice. Jesus drank it, so it must be good. That's what Jackson told them. Lee says he's not surprised at the boy's allegations. Lee was with Jackson in Tokyo in 1998 when Jackson announced with great fanfare a new venture with a Japanese consortium to open 3 theme parks and a chain of stores called Wonder World of Toys that would stretch across Japan. The project failed immediately, according to Lee, because of what happened to the 13-year-old son of one of Jackson's Japanese partners. So this is another boy. Quote, during this time, Michael took the boy to a theme park one evening. One of Jackson's people gave Michael 3 soda cans full of Jesus juice. Later that evening, the boy came back sick. Security informed me he appeared drunk and his father was upset. This is another boy. In the current case, the trip the boy and his family made to Florida coincided with the airing of the British documentary on ABC last year in which Jackson, now 45, told interviewer Martin Brashear that there was nothing wrong with sharing his bed with little boys. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with sharing your bed with little boys, especially when you're a pedophile. I gotta molest these boys somehow, right? Nothing wrong. It was a very brazen thing for Jackson to admit, given the fact that in Los Angeles in 1994, he had to pay $25 million to Jordy Chandler and his family in order to settle a civil suit in which Jordy, then 13, charged that Jackson had masturbated and filleted him during their relationship, which ironically also included a trip to Florida. I think James was taken to Florida as well. Similarities in Michael Jackson's modus operandi between the latest bizarre scandal and the one that preceded it abound, right down to the tactics of intimidation and the controversial use of the Nation of Islam for security. In 1993, armed members of the South Central LA gangs, including the Notorious Bloods, were transported to Neverland. I think I talked about this in my last podcast. And the employment of these toughs was said to have sent a strong message to Neverland employees who might have considered cooperating in the Jordy Chandler investigation. Not to mention the subliminal message it gave out to the other boys and their families who might have been thinking of coming forward. When 70 members of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department and DA's office, including a team of forensic experts, invaded Neverland last November 18, while Jackson was in Vegas, they had already spent 5 months investigating the child's allegations. Although Jackson was reputedly taken by surprise, cops with search warrants also entered the homes and workplaces of Jackson employees, and a private investigator named Bradley Miller, his high-powered and expensive criminal attorney Mark Geragos, had already been on the case since February. A curiosity in itself, since no criminal charges had been filed. So Jackson knew what was coming down. Over the years, Jackson had doled out millions upon millions of dollars to lawyers, doctors, accountants, security people, con men, voodoo chiefs, business advisors, members of his bankrupted dysfunctional family, an ex-wife who allegedly threatened to tell his secrets, former staffers on remittance, and the families of young boys he has made his special friends all over the world. So he's paying families of young boys where he made these special friends all over the world. There's almost never a time when he is free of crisis. And as a result, say many who know him, it has become more and more difficult for him to trust his advisors or not to feel paranoid about something. He has a lot of skeletons in his closet, says Lee. Some are real, some are in his mind, which makes him a prisoner of all those around him. The result is often chaos. Jackson has a $200 million plus bank loan guaranteed by his half interest in Sony ATV music catalog, which owns the publishing rights to 251 Beatles songs and many other pop songs, and it falls due in 2005. These days, it's difficult to get a straight read on Jackson's finances, other than the cash flow situation, which is reportedly dire. Gee, I wonder why this man who raked in millions upon millions of dollars for Thriller and Bad and all this music that he produced, why is he broke? Why is that? Why did the man die broke? It's because he had to pay out all this money to shut up people around him. And why was he paying out all this money? Why was he giving all this money to all these people? Does somebody want to answer that for me? Somebody want to explain? Nobody really knows if there is money or not, says Dieter Weisner, one of his recent managers. The coveted Sony ATV catalog is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, as I reported in this magazine last year, Sony has the right of first refusal if Jackson is forced to sell his share, and he cannot sell, according to Lee. Before October 2005, the 10th anniversary of the partnership, there are reports that Jackson is meanwhile being bailed out by a number of interested parties. These include Al Malnick, the flamboyant Miami lawyer who once represented Meyer Lansky. Malnick reportedly put up much of the money to settle 2 civil suits against Jackson last year, a figure estimated at close to $10 million. So there's 2 other civil suits? Are those young boys? I don't know. It does not say. In times of trouble in the past, most notably during the first molestation case, Jackson has turned to drugs. Kat Pelicano remembers a very high Michael Jackson in her house in August 1993, nodding out and drinking glass after glass of orange soda. Kat is a former wife of Anthony Pelicano, the private investigator who worked back then for Jackson's attorneys Brett Fields and Howard Weitzman. Fields has been questioned in a current FBI investigation involving Pelicano's use of wiretapping for clients. Pelicano, who's now in jail, he's now out of jail, but back in 2004 he was in jail, was then the muscle the Jackson team used to intimidate potential witnesses against the singer and accused Jordy Chandler's father of extortion. After the first molestation scandal broke, Anthony wanted to get Michael out of the country as soon as possible, Kat says. When Michael came into the house, my 3-year-old daughter asked if he were a boy or a girl. I told her a boy, that some boys had long hair, but do they wear makeup? That day, Kat drove her husband and Jackson to the airport where they boarded a private jet for Asia. A few months later, Jackson checked himself into a London detox center. His stay there was prompted by a frantic phone call a Mexican doctor had made to one of the pop star's business advisors who recalls, quote, "The doctor said either the drugs are going to kill him or he's going to die by flying out of a window because he thinks he can fly. You better get someone here he'll listen to. Otherwise, there won't be a Michael Jackson." Elizabeth Taylor was enlisted. She immediately said, "I'll go." She got him into rehab and he got himself out right away. So this doesn't shock me because Michael Jackson would always tell little boys that he could levitate, or if you're pure, you could levitate. And he was always trying to live in this make-believe world where he could fly. So I can see where drugs would enhance that feeling that maybe he thought he could really fly. While Jackson was in London undergoing detox, Los Angeles and Santa Barbara authorities negotiated terms for him coming back to have his genitals photographed. If he returned voluntarily, they would not handcuff or arrest him. It turned out that Jordan Chandler had been able to draw very accurately certain distinctive markings on Jackson, which gave the boys' lawyers the ammunition they needed to settle the civil suit at such a high price. Now, understand that people knew Jordy's drawing of Michael Jackson's penis was correct. This was known back in 2004. This was known before then. The only people that didn't know were people who were Michael Jackson fans who didn't want to listen to the truth, that did not want to listen to reality. Everyone else knew. And believe me, listen, I was part of the people that didn't want to listen to reality. I was a Michael Jackson fan back then. I didn't want to listen to it. But then as I started learning about the case and started going back and I find something like this, it becomes so much more clear how obvious it was for the people that had followed the case, for the people that knew what was going on. It was understood. This was not an argument. The boy drew his penis. The case was settled the night before Jackson was to be deposed. Several months later, when the authorities were finally ready to bring charges, the boy and his family declined to prosecute, saying they feared they would be harmed. There are reports that the boy in the current case also has provided drawings of Jackson's private parts to police. So this is something that was brought up by Jim Clemente on a podcast he did, and I think it's his own podcast. If anybody knows that podcast, can you please link it below if you know what I'm talking about? Because I can't access anything on my Twitter, which is another story. I am banned off Twitter. Twitter is cancer. I'm just gonna say that now. But there's a lot of good information that I had, and I can't find anything. I can't access anything. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about, please link it below and I will pin it, or I will find a way to put it there, and a big thank you in advance. But he did talk about how Gavin also drew a photo of Michael Jackson in his genitals, and there must have been something similar. I think people would argue, well, doesn't he have vitiligo? Wouldn't it look different after 10 years? I don't know. I'm just letting you know that there were reports that this current case, there were reports, so that's what he was referring to, and this seems to back it up. Throughout the 90s, Jackson portrayed himself as sort of pure Peter Pan, but he had serious drug problems. Last year, I covered the civil trial in which European concert promoter Marcel Avram was suing Jackson for $21.2 million for canceling 2 Millennium concerts scheduled for New Year's 2000. And he canceled concerts all the time. Like, this isn't the only time he canceled concerts. He canceled them all the time. He had no regard for anybody but himself. Bottom line. And if you read the book that I reviewed last time, the one by Christopher Anderson, what was it? Unauthorized. It talks a lot about canceling concerts and just kind of doing whatever the hell he wanted. And he had one lawsuit after the next. So it appears the time after Jordan Chandler all the way till Gavin, Arvizo, he was also caught up in a myriad of court issues and lawsuits and things like that. During his first appearance in front of the jury, Jackson practically fell asleep. And when he came back later, he grimaced at spectators, made devil's horns with his fingers, and generally behaved as if he were 12. Well, that's nothing new. Jackson did act like a child. He ended up losing the case and having to pay Avram $5.3 million. Looking back, I remember being struck by one exhibit presented by the plaintiff, a bill Avram said he had to pay to 2 German doctors for nearly $264,000. I later learned that the doctors had not only taken care of an injury Jackson had suffered when he fell on stage in Munich in 1999, but also previously put him through drug detox. An expense report submitted in a lawsuit that Mayung Ho Lee brought against Jackson, which was settled last June, there are entries showing $62,645 owed to the Mickey Fine Pharmacy in Beverly Hills. And I think that's the one that banned him. I don't know if it mentions it later on, but one of these pharmacies actually ended up banning him. We're not serving you anymore. Lee tells me that in 1999, he employed Dr. Neil Ratner, an anesthesiologist and former rock drummer, to put Michael through detox and soul. Ratner, the government's star witness against prominent Manhattan gynecologist Dr. Niels Lawrenson, who was convicted of insurance fraud in 2001, admitted to being stoned himself much of the time he injected his patients in the 80s, and to once collapsing in an operating room, almost mistakenly shooting himself up with a paralytic agent. Oh my God. I met with the doctor on a regular basis, says Lee. We were getting Michael off of what he was addicted to, Demerol and morphine. His problem is a sleep disorder. He's up 48 hours at a time and then crashes. When I asked Ratner about his work with Jackson and Soul, he says patient-doctor relationships are not something I choose to comment about. So he's up for 48 hours and then he crashes. He's on other drugs, or I don't know. I guess that's what happens when you molest children. Maybe your mind just doesn't allow you to rest because your conscience knows you're a piece of shit. In Washington, D.C. in 2001, after Jackson appeared at a benefit concert for 9/11 victims, he left his ubiquitous black bag filled with prescription drugs behind. Now listen to this. Listen to this. It was found by Washington police who returned it. No questions asked. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Clearly, Michael Jackson is not the defenseless creature and victim of racism he and his family and handlers so assiduously claim him to be in the never-ending stream of interviews they grant and mostly dominate on cable TV and network news shows. And in real life, he does not speak in the falsetto he employed most recently in the controversial 60-minute interview on CBS in December, when he was asked only very general questions relating to the current case, and when he charged that he had been injured by Santa Barbara police during his arrest. People who have spent time with Jackson report that he has a soft but normal quote-unquote guy's voice in the phrase of one. Since his charges of police brutality have largely backfired, his side is once again claiming that the family accusing him now is only out for money, and that Santa Barbara County District Attorney Tom Sneeden, who, along with LA County officials, investigated him in 1993 but did not bring charges, is out for revenge. Those are the twin spins held by Jackson supporters, whether they concede with the facts or not. And clearly they do not coincide with the facts. The problem with this is he first tried to say that the police had manhandled him and had hurt him. He was claiming police brutality, and he even got on TV and showed his arm and said, oh, they hurt my arm, they did all this. Well, the whole thing was either recorded, like either in the car, or his attorney was with him inside the dang police station. Everything was on camera or it was recorded. So this idea that they somehow were able to rough him up in some way is ridiculous. In fact, it was reported that some police officers had asked for an autograph. They didn't even want to arrest Michael Jackson. They were so enamored with who he was and his celebrity. So that totally backfired because he was proven to be a complete liar. Nobody wanted money from him. The Arvizos never wanted money from him. They never went to civil court. They never did that. And Tom Sneeden was not able to charge him because the police investigation was not able to be completed. They didn't even know. It's going to come up. It's going to come up. We'll get there. I'm just going to continue on. The 10-year-old boy had been given only a few weeks to live, and Michael Jackson was number 3 on the wish list of people he wanted to meet. Adam Sandler was first. Adam Sandler might be my first celebrity I'd like to meet, by the way. Either him or Norm Macdonald or Vince Vaughn. I don't know. Those are my top 3. Definitely. At just the moment in 2000 when he was being asked to come up with names, Jackson's image happened to be on TV in his hospital room, and he pointed to the screen and told his friend Jamie Masada, owner of LA's Laugh Factory, I want to meet Michael Jackson too. In order to get the boy, who weighed only 60 pounds, to eat, Masada would say, you've got to get better if you're going to see Adam Sandler. The Hispanic boy from East LA had been operated on for an 8-pound cancerous tumor on his left kidney. His spleen and the kidney had been removed, but the cancer had spread across his lungs and liver. He had not taken chemotherapy well, and his blood type was the rare O negative, CMV negative. He had sores in his mouth and could not keep anything down. He started to eat cantaloupe and ice cream, but after 2 spoons, he started vomiting blood, Masada recalls. Would you try again? Masada begged him. If you eat, you can meet anyone you want. The boy gradually got better, and after several months, Masada, who visited daily, took him in his wheelchair to the Laugh Factory on Sunset Strip, where the comics on stage took special notice of him. Some of them also did benefits for him, and anyone who donated blood got into the club free. I mean, what a horrible situation. But yeah, he's gonna go ahead and, meet Michael Jackson, and then he's gonna lie and accuse him of molestation because why? I mean, what fans want us to believe is so ridiculous. I can't. Masada, a charitable Iranian immigrant who arrived in Los Angeles at 14, sponsors the Laugh Factory's comedy camp during the summer. The program helps underprivileged children turn their pain into laughs by having them do stand-up routines under the tutelage of well-known comedians. The boy in question, along with his younger brother and older sister, had participated in the camp. Masada phoned Neverland, told whoever answered to try to watch a local TV broadcast that night about the blood drive for the boy, and asked if Michael Jackson could call and cheer him up. 2 days later, Jackson called. At that time, the boy's parents, who had married as teenagers, were in their early 30s and still together, but it was a volatile household where money was always short. Okay, so one Saturday, this is last December, I visited the gritty East LA suburbs where the family had lived. Now, this is Maureen. I just want to point that out. Not me. I didn't go there. In a yard sale in El Monte, where the boy's maternal grandparents reside, used clothes and toys priced at 50 cents and $1 were displayed mercado style on lawns and across bushes. Many people spoke only Spanish and would say little about the family. There were drawn curtains and a no trespassing sign on the grandparents' door. To the lower middle class people with little education who live on these smog-filled streets, Neverland, with all its enticements, must seem like an incredible dream. Both parents accompanied the boy along with his sister and brother to Neverland in August 2000 to meet Jackson. The father also went with the boy to have lunch on the Sony lot with Adam Sandler, who introduced him to Rob Schneider. Chris Tucker, according to Masada, became a kind of mentor to the boy, outfitting him in Nike clothes. The boy, in turn, took Tucker to Neverland to introduce him to Jackson. George Lopez also befriended the boy. These comics are now distancing themselves from the case, and their representatives barely acknowledge or even deny their clients' meetings with him. One day, when the boy had begun to improve, he told Masada, "Me and my dad went to Neverland." Not long after, Masada claims the father stopped by the Laugh Factory to show off a car with a TV in it, which he said was a gift from Jackson. Jackson had also lent the family his pickup truck to go to chemotherapy appointments, but they did not pay many visits to Neverland. After about a year and a half of chemo, Masada says, and all the special attention from the comics and the trips to Neverland, the boy's cancer went into remission. This child, according to the people who know him, is far less sophisticated than Jordy Chandler was at his age, and his relationship with Jackson was not the same intensity, though the setup when the family stayed at Neverland was very similar. The boys got to sleep with Michael rather than in the guest bedroom up the flight of stairs. The sister had her own room, and the mother was put up in a guest house some distance from the main house. Jackson reportedly made it clear he did not want the girl or the mother around, allegedly telling the boys, "Girls are tattletales." Gaining access to Jackson's private quarters is not at all the easy path the Jackson camp has suggested in various interviews, where they have implied that servants and staff can freely observe the going-ons. Ma Young-ho Lee, who was at Neverland on many occasions, describes the layout of Jackson's bedroom. Now, so he's going to explain what I have already explained before, is that this idea that anyone could just go around Jackson's room or go around this house, or it was free and open and all this other stuff, is a lie. It is a blatant lie by staff members, by visitors, and now we're going to hear from Ma Young-ho Lee. You enter the main door on the right-hand side, and there's a small hallway of about 6 feet to another door on the left. As soon as anyone comes through the first door, an alarm goes off, and the camera mounted above the second door shows on the monitor in his bedroom who is approaching. A visitor first enters a large sitting room, a sort of throne room of about 500 square feet, where he has a chair where the king sits with other chairs grouped around. Lee says of the bedroom, "Nobody's allowed in there, even guests." According to a confidential report prepared for the Chandler suit, electric eyes were installed in the ceiling 10 feet from the bedroom door, and the system was always active when Jackson was on the ranch. The alarm was loud enough to be heard in the bedroom, even with the shower running. The alarm was not installed to deter prowlers or kidnappers. The security outside was sufficient for that. Infrared beams planted every 20 feet in concrete beams sunk 17 feet into the ground. The bedroom alarm was strictly to alert Jackson to the presence of anyone outside the door. So he's got this elaborate alarm system set up. He's got multiple children, multiple complaints, multiple payouts. But, oh yeah, nothing to see here. He's totally innocent. He's got books of naked boys, but yeah, don't worry about it. He didn't mean any harm. He was a good man. Inside the bedroom closet was a special cedar closet built to hold the original owner's furs. 5 vertical stainless steel panels between the 2 closets would lower when a 5-digit secret code was triggered. In case of a security risk, a ranch supervisor would alert Jackson by intercom to tell him, "My Michael, go to your room. This was the signal for Jackson to lock himself in the fur vault. Once things were under control, the supervisor would let him out. As for other surveillance, Ma Young-ho Lee says, Michael has a very bad habit of videotaping and recording everyone. His entire house is wired so he can hear conversations anywhere. A similar situation is set up when Jackson travels. Security has a monitoring room with cameras trained on the hallway to his hotel suite and on the interior of the suite. And if I remember correctly, I think Wade and James both talked about being filmed at some point. One of the largest bills in the expense reports filed in Lee's case was from a local audiovisual store for hundreds of thousands of dollars. One time in New York, I got a $150,000 bill for surveillance equipment, says Lee's sister, So Young, who was the chief legal officer for Jackson International between 1998 and 2001. She was often frustrated because the store's invoices never specified what the money actually went to purchase, but she thought that was the way Michael wanted it. Once Michael bought $70,000 worth of merchandise, and they were very difficult to deal with because they were very secretive about what it was Michael bought. I heard it was mostly surveillance equipment to watch his own staff. Ma Young-ho Lee, who traveled the world with Jackson, observed his behavior firsthand. Now, he goes on to say he had a number of guests in the suite with him that night. They were always boys, 10 to 13 years. I'd never seen him share a suite with an older teen, a girl, or an older female. I thought it was very strange. A family from the Netherlands with 2 young boys stayed with Jackson in his suite in Sun City in South Africa when Lee was along. The parents stayed just as June Chandler, Jordy's mother, had in a suite but in a different room. Lee paid the bills for the family's first-class holiday and gifts. Jackson's own children often stayed in rooms away from the suite, and security and staff usually slept in a different part of the hotel altogether. So this was a family from the Neverlands, and this is the first time I have ever seen this in print, because I have long heard the story of a young boy. This is 2 young boys, but I've heard a story for a long time now about a family in the Neverlands who may have known exactly what Jackson was doing and let their boy stay with Michael Jackson. Is this the same one? I don't know, but I find this to be wow. I have long heard that story, and I'm not going to go into details because I don't know if it's true or if it's not true, or there's a lot more details that I have been told about that story. I'll just put it that way, but I don't have a way to confirm that, so I'm not going to get into it. But wow, that stood out to me because it may just confirm part of what I've heard before. Who knows? For anyone familiar with the Jordy Chandler case, seeing the current boy lovingly lay his head against Jackson's shoulder in the Martin Bashir documentary was a shock. The boy was very much the same type as Jordy, the same age, and he repeated the same words that Jackson had once allegedly told Jordy: "If you love me, you'll sleep in my bed." Jackson even had the same nickname for both Jordy and this boy, Rubba. The boy made it clear on camera, however, that Jackson had slept on the floor. The documentary aired in the U.S. on February 6th, but it had been broadcast 3 days earlier in Britain, and it immediately caused a stir because of Jackson's admissions about his habit of sleeping with little boys. Suddenly, the grandparents' neighborhood was filled with TV satellite trucks. The mother claims she had not even known that the special was being made. Granada Television, which produced the special, claimed that it had gotten permission from the maternal grandmother, which the grandmother denies. If he did well on the show, Jackson allegedly told the boy he would help help him get into show business. The boy praised him on the program. Soon after the taping with the boy was complete, Jackson took off. Then suddenly, about the time the documentary was shown on ABC's 2020, Jackson invited the boy to Florida, ostensibly for a news conference, which never took place. The mother says she insisted that she and the boy's 2 siblings go along with Chris Tucker on a private jet. According to the family's accounts, Jackson was peeved and made it clear he thought the mother was expendable. After several days in Miami, where Jackson allegedly gave the boy alcohol, everyone flew back together, and there was reportedly more drinking of Jesus juice out of the Coke cans. So the documentary had immediate repercussions for the boy. His mother called Masada in tears. They had been at a gas station where the kids recognized the boy from TV and started teasing him for sleeping with Michael Jackson and calling him gay. Masada, who had not yet seen the special, asked her if she had given permission or signed a release for the boy to appear on TV. According to Masada, she said no, adding that Jackson's camp was trying to get her to sign something now. Masada told her to ask Jackson if he had given permission. Then Masada and several insiders claim the Jackson camp swung into action on a number of fronts. Principal members of the team minding the family reportedly were gay porn producer-director Mark Schaeffel, who had once produced a song for Jackson, his longtime handler, Frank Tyson, known as Casio, who traveled when he was a child with Jackson, and Vinnie Amen from New Jersey. The bewildered family had little idea what was going on, but they wanted to help Jackson. The boy was very high on Michael, says a family associate. They are simple people, Masada tells me. This goes on. The mother called Masada again, even more upset. She explained, he says, that someone had called the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, and they want to interview her because they think she is an unfit mother, allowing her kids to sleep over at Michael Jackson's, and they are going to take away the kids. What shall I do? And I believe there were a few people who had seen this documentary, and they were professionals in grooming and child molestation, and they were very concerned, and they contacted the authorities, and that's part of what prompted this visit with the family services. Masada says she went into the February meeting worried to death she was going to lose her kids. According to several sources, including Masada, representatives of Jackson drove her and the children to the meeting and tried to sit in on it. When they were told no, a Jackson person handed the mother a tape recorder, told her to tape the meeting. She did not do that. At that point, she says she still knew nothing about the alleged molestation or alcohol, and she continued to deny any wrongdoing on Jackson's part. Apparently, the Jackson person told the agency that the children would be put in private schools and the family provided with a home. The boy had dropped out of public school after the teasing, and this family was staying at Neverland allegedly for their own protection. And it should be noted here that when the police raided Neverland, they found orders that were written out that stated the boys, Gavin and his brothers, or Gavin and his siblings, were not allowed to leave the property. Those were the orders that were given to security. So this idea that the woman made up this story about being trapped at Neverland, that's not true. There was evidence that they were not allowing, at least the children, they were not allowing them to leave that property. Much has been made in the media of this confidential meeting because in early December, a DCFS memo dictated on November 26th, only 6 days after Jackson's arrest, and stating that allegations of sexual misconduct on Jackson's part with this boy were deemed unfounded, was leaked to the website thesmokinggun.com. It is highly irregular for such a memo to be written after the fact, and curious that the official to whom it was addressed was revealed by the TV show Celebrity Justice to have offices 2 doors down from one of Jackson's private investigators in the case. So there seems to be some insinuation that perhaps this was fake, and we know that Jackson often leaked fake news stories to the press. He did so all the time. The family say they were told by Jackson's people that because of the documentary, there were death threats against them and they were in danger. In addition, the mother, who says she has no idea at the time about anything untoward, was put on audio tape by Garagos's criminal investigator and on videotape by Jackson's videographer, saying that Jackson was a wonderful man. And this video is available online. I think it's on YouTube. And she says she was told that if she didn't look happy on tape, she would be reported to DCFS. Masada finally saw the special when it was rebroadcast on February 17th. I watched it in disbelief. They didn't digitize the boy's face or anything. He again asked the mother how anything could be shown without her permission. She told him she had signed various papers, but the mother alleges she did not know what she was signing. One of the papers with the mother's signature on it purportedly became the bulwark of a complaint by Jackson to the British Broadcasting Standards Commission and the Independent Television Commission. Jackson's people hired British lawyers to help her loudly protest the Bashir documentary and attempt to prevent the documentary or any additional footage from being sold on DVD or VHS, thereby paving the way for Jackson to reap millions by selling a 2-hour rebuttal program hosted by Maury Povich to Fox. In order to keep her prominently in the complaint, the mother claims one of Jackson's lawyers later offered her $5,000 if she would pursue it. She says she refused. Okay, and we've seen the Maury Povich thing. And why was it that Jackson had his own people record things? It seems like he was very interested in cashing in, always 2 steps ahead, always thinking about how he can cash in and make money. A source close to the case says that Jackson even tried to get the mother to let the husband of one of the female attorneys in Garagos's office take over lingering legal issues with the boy's father. This is another echo of the Chandler case where Bert Fields, Jackson's lawyer then, attempted to intervene for Jordy's mother in her custody dispute with his father, even though Fields represented Jackson and knew that the father had made an allegation of possible sexual molestation. At the same time, the family was asked by Jackson's people for their personal papers, including birth certificates, so that passports could be obtained for them. And for 5 days, they were put up and guarded for their protection, they were told, in a hotel in Ventura County south of Neverland, while their passports and visas were being obtained. The family alleges that someone from Jackson's camp unilaterally went to the boys' school and changed the name of the person to be notified in case of emergency to that of a Jackson insider. And I believe there was indeed, if I remember correctly in the trial, there was indeed evidence presented that confirmed this, that somebody had gone to the school and they had indeed changed the person to contact in case of an emergency. One of Jackson's people allegedly told the family that they should move to Brazil or Argentina to be safe. They charged that Jackson's people had them vacate their small apartment in East LA say their clothes and furniture were put into storage by Jackson's people, who they claim would not tell them where their belongings were. Mark Geragos later told their representative that the move had been videotaped and that the mother signed off on it, a claim she denies. None of Jackson's alleged promises were kept about paying for school or getting the family a new home. Masada says that to his knowledge, Jackson did not pick up the boy's medical bills either, contrary to some media reports. Here we have another lie that was told, that Michael Jackson paid for this boy's bills and he had insurance already, but yet he paid. And there's this whole lie out there that this family tried manipulating him to pay these bills, even though they would have been taken care of, whatever. Jackson did not pay this child's medical bills. It's not to say he didn't help this family in some way. He certainly helped the father. And if you go through the trial and you actually read the trial, you will find that the only thing that the defense really proved was that the father was a scumbag. Essentially, he was the one who was trying to get money off people. He was the one who was trying to profit. Ultimately, he's also the one who left and was out of their life by the time all of this happened. He was not around by the time the trial came about, I should say. Nobody really had anything bad or any direct knowledge of the mother actually doing anything wrong. Unfortunately, she was a poor witness because she obviously became flustered. She's not a very educated woman. She did not present herself in a credible or professional manner, to say the least. In late February, the mother, saying she was upset that her belongings had been taken and that her son was being exploited, complained to Masada, who sneaked her out of the back door of the apartment of a friend she was visiting. Jackson's people were waiting at the entrance to take her to meet attorney William Dickerson. She said she felt like a prisoner, but she would not go to the authorities because her son did not want her to. She was very scared, says Masada. The next 2 times the mother met with Dickerson were at the Laugh Factory because Masada claims Jackson knew she was friends with him and allowed her to visit there. All of the family's activities were monitored. The mother seemed terrified that she was going to be sent to Brazil and claimed there was intense pressure on her to move there. Apparently, it did not occur to her that she could just refuse to go. At one point, she called a friend from a payphone asking that the police be informed, but nothing came of it. Myung-ho Lee says that Jackson is very capable of playing rough. Michael is very vindictive if anybody tries to do anything about him. He claims if he has the upper hand, he will destroy you. Sometime in mid-March, the mother says she managed to escape from Neverland by claiming she was taking the boy to the doctor for an appointment before they were to leave for Brazil. Once there, she and the children sneaked out the back door and fled to a friend's apartment. After their escape, they charged they were harassed continually, and on one occasion, the mother found a Jackson staffer videotaping the boy's new school. The mother says she was convinced that the phone where she was living was tapped and that she was being followed in her car. She says people banged on their door in the middle of the night, rocks were thrown at the grandparents' home, and a note was slipped under the door telling them to contact Jackson's camp. She asked Dickerson to help her get her belongings back. So this was the attorney she was already seeing. She was seeing this attorney to help with the custody matter involving her kids, and then she asked this attorney to help her to get her belongings back from Jackson's camp. The other thing I want to make note of here is when police raided Neverland, they found videotape exactly what she's claiming. Her son, Gavin's brother, there was film of him going to school. There was film of the family going on errands and things like that. They were absolutely being spied upon by Jackson's camp. So for anybody who wants to sit here and say this mother was was lying or they weren't doing anything, etc., etc. I've heard all of the excuses. I've heard everybody try to paint this woman as being crazy or she's a liar or she made all this stuff up. Okay, why does that film exist? Why did police find evidence that Jackson's people were following them? Why does that exist if this woman is a liar and she's crazy? This is gaslighting is what this is. You are taking victims and you are gaslighting them and you're calling them liars. Dickerson then sent the first of 10 letters to Gergos demanding that the family's personal papers, their belongings, and all video and audio tapes Jackson's people made of them be turned over to them. He also asked that all direct threats, surveillance, and photography of the children's school, banging on the mother's door, leaving the disturbing notes, audio taping, filming the family must be stopped. Since no criminal allegations had yet been made, it seems extremely odd that a criminal attorney as famous as Gergos would get involved in a dispute over some garbage bags full of clothes. Gergos did not respond to repeated phone calls. Gergos, and this is the man that, let's remind ourselves, is associated with Scott Peterson, and he was also associated with Michael Avenatti, and briefly brought in for Jussie Smollett. So these are the type of people that Michael Jackson surrounds himself with. But hey, he's innocent, right? Gergos just happens to finally find an innocent client. Is that what I'm supposed to be getting? I mean, give me a break. Gergos asked for a few days to look into the matter. According to a source, most of the harassment eventually stopped. Dickerson had made it known he would be away on April 24th, and that day, a truck full of the family's belongings was unceremoniously dumped in the lobby of the building in West LA, housing his law office. Furious, Dickerson instructed building personnel not to accept the delivery, and it took 4 more letters from him to Gergos before the family finally found out where their things were stored in late June. There was never any acknowledgement by Gergos in reference to the missing personal papers, documents, passports, tapes, and the subject of harassment. On the contrary, he called Dickerson his trionic. And in another eerie echo of the Chandler case, the boy said that his underwear and tap shoes and a few other personal items were missing. Now, she also references that this is something that was brought up in the book Michael Jackson Was My Lover, that Jackson had a drawer where he kept the underwear of boys who stayed with him overnight. I don't know if that's necessarily true or has been confirmed, but it has been stated repeatedly that when Michael Jackson was at Havenhurst, he had a drawer that was filled with the diapers of his nephews and nieces, at least one dirty diaper, and he kept that in his drawer. Consequently, his room stank, and consequently, Michael Jackson stank. This is why he used the phrase doo-doo head, and he was called Stinky. I think somebody called him Stinky. I want to say it was Quincy Jones, maybe. There were a couple people that had called him. They referenced his body odor. He didn't shower much. He was basically disgusting overall. Anyway, once the mother told Dickerson the boy's story, he asked if she wanted to sue Jackson civilly, but she would not agree. She was concerned mainly with retrieving her belongings. However, by then, it was known that Jackson had allegedly given wine and perhaps vodka and antihistamine pills to the boy and had allegedly shown both brothers pornography with naked girls in it. And again, I have to reiterate, if you go through the trial and you go through the information, the boys directed police where to find the pornography. And when police got to Neverland, that's where the pornography was. He also allegedly given the sister sleeping pills. Dickerson suggested they all go see Larry Feldman, the lawyer who had won the $25 million settlement for Jordy Chandler and had interviewed interviewed several prior special friends of Jackson. One of the things that Jackson fans like to claim is that she went and sought out this Larry Feldman herself, or even knew about Larry Feldman. And she did this because she wanted money. Okay, it always goes back to them thinking she wanted money, yet again, she never sued him civilly in civil court, which she still could have. Just because you lose in criminal court doesn't mean you can't prove your case in civil court. You have that option. You always have that option. And the fact of the matter is, it was her attorney that she was already seeing because of other matters. That's where she went. And he is the one who suggested they talk to Larry Feldman, because Larry Feldman had, as has been stated, interviewed several prior special friends of Jackson's. So he had intimate understanding of this case. Feldman recognized instantly that this relationship was not the same intense love affair that had allegedly gone on between Jackson and Jordy Chandler. Jordy had been very self-confident. This boy, once so bubbly, had become shy and withdrawn and spoke barely above a whisper. Feldman heard the family story in the same conference room where he had first listened to Jordy Chandler and his father, Evan. He felt perhaps more had gone on between Jackson and the boy than he was being told. So he decided to send the boy to a top child psychologist who was known to be conservative about declaring whether or not abuse had taken place. According to Feldman, there was no shrink shopping, as has been reported. After several sessions, the psychologist concluded that accusations of sexual molestation were credible. Moreover, the boy's brother claims to have been a witness to some of it. He had sometimes even been in bed with Jackson and his brother. Feldman realized that there were many reminders here of the Chandler case, from the allegations that Jackson had asked whether the boy wanted to learn how to masturbate. It's really fun, to his apparently saying it was natural, and that just because some people say it's bad, it's not. Jamie Masada says the mother never wanted money. When I took her to Bill Dickerson's office, he asked her, "What do you want out of this?" She told me, "I don't want to make any money. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to other kids." California law states that once an allegation of sexual abuse of a minor has been disclosed by the minor, the professional hearing the allegation must report it to the authorities. In late May, Feldman took the psychologist and another lawyer from his office to the DCFS, where the family had gone in February. In Chandler's case, Jordy's report alleging that Michael had filleted and masturbated him had been sold by someone to a tabloid news service. Feldman was therefore wary. 2 caseworkers listened to them and then asked if the boy was in any current danger. According to Feldman, when they told them no, to Feldman's and the psychologist's utter astonishment, the caseworkers declined to receive the psychologist's allegations. They appeared not to want to report or deal with this problem again. There has been speculation since that the memo leaked by the DCFS last December was a bureaucratic attempt by the department to cover its backside, and Feldman has called for an investigation into who leaked the memo and why his visit with the new allegations of abuse was not referred to. DCFS has declined to comment. Of course, Feldman called the Santa Barbara County District Attorney, Tom Sneeden, who had spent months on the Chandler case. He, too, was very familiar with allegations of how Jackson had operated in the past, but had never charged him. The Chandlers have said they got tired of waiting for the authorities to act, and that they felt so threatened by the high-handed tactics of Jackson's people that they asked for protection, which could not be guaranteed. Jordy Chandler Chandler declined to testify against Jackson, but Sneeden had been present when Jackson went into meltdown while his genitals were being photographed in 1993, which would provide the crucial evidence needed for the civil case. Jackson slapped his doctor and cursed the detectives. Sneeden saw the photos and has a full case history in his files. He asked Feldman to give him his solemn word he would not sue Jackson civilly while the new case was being investigated and tried. Feldman gave his word. On November 18th, a forensic van, a paddy wagon, and a dozen other law enforcement vehicles rolled into Neverland. Jackson's team has made it known that the boy's family has sued for money in the past. One day in 1998, when the boy was 8, he walked out of the JCPenney in West Covina, California, and into the parking lot with clothes from the store that had not been paid for. His father was walking behind him. 3 security guards pursued them and later said they had ordered them to stop, but the father kept walking. Soon, the mother, who was with her other son in another part of the parking lot, arrived and got in the middle of the fracas. A Tower Records security guard also became involved. The mother's top got pulled down in the struggle, and when the police handcuffed her, her breasts were exposed. The 8-year-old suffered a sprain, possibly a fractured arm, and his brother got a bruise on the forehead. The family sued for multiple claims of physical, emotional, and mental injury and settled in late 2001 for $152,500. By then, the boy was almost 12 and had been diagnosed with cancer. A month later, the mother filed for divorce. The father was ordered not to approach or contact his family for 4 years after pleading no contest to 1 count of physical abuse of the mother in December 2001 and to 1 count of child endangerment the following June. He was fined, put on probation, and required to take domestic violence counseling and parenting classes and do community service. Against this soap opera backdrop, the 3 children were interviewed by DCFS, met celebrities through Jamie Masada, and were eventually taken up by Michael Jackson. Whenever Jackson is in jeopardy, his team of defenders rolls into action like a tank, and its current mission is to destroy the credibility of this family by means of cable and tabloid TV and the mainstream media. In December, in a widely quoted story, the New York Times, referring to the delay in the filing charges against Jackson, said it had prompted some in the Jackson camp to say Mr. Sneeden is playing a weak hand on a single child's shaky testimony. One of Mr. Jackson's lawyers suggested this week that Mr. Sneeden might be forced to drop the prosecution before a trial. In January, a highly suspect blind item appeared in Cindy Adams' gossip column in the New York Post under the headline, "Case Against Jacko is Said to be Flimsy." Adams reported that the mother had shopped her case and 2 lawyers had turned it down, adding that even attorneys who had opposed Michael in the first case didn't want in on this one because the evidence was so thin that Michael Jackson cannot be found guilty. So this is where these stories come from. They come from Michael Jackson. They come from his team. They were leaked to the press. And again, the mainstream media, they reported this stuff. They supported Michael Jackson. There were not very many reporters who were speaking up about the truth, except Maureen Orth and Diane Diamond. Those are about the only 2 I can think of. Howard Stern, who had given a voice to LaToya Jackson. That's about it. So again, I have to make this point, and I keep making it, I know, but I want people to understand that this line that the mainstream media was always against Michael Jackson is just simply a lie, outright falsehood. The fact is that an army of forensic experts took part in the Neverland raid, combing Jackson's bedroom for pubic hairs, semen stains, and other possibly incriminating items, and they are reportedly satisfied that they have plenty to work with. The sealed affidavit in the case is more than 80 pages long, but Tom Sneeden is clearly not good at war waged in the media, and he appears not to be interested in learning. As for the mother, who is unavailable for comment comment, she is said to be leaving everything to God. By contrast, Jackson's camp comes up with one photo op after another, starting with the much publicized turnout of 600 supporters at Neverland on December 20th, and including the Michael Jackson #1's CBS special, when I think that Jackson is now guarded by the Nation of Islam. Brought in by his nanny and his brother Jermaine, I am reminded of the former Jackson employee who told me last year that Michael had so little regard for black people that he called them spa books. I also remember how Jermaine, who emotes every chance he gets about Jackson family unity, let drop in a TV interview last year that his 2-year-old son, Jeremy Jasty, had never met his Uncle Michael. So much for unity. And Nation of Islam, gee, I wonder why Michael Jackson would be interested in Islam. Oh yeah, their leader was a pedophile. Huh. I guess it's just like another coincidence, right? Is that what fans want us to believe? It's just another coincidence, guys. There's nothing to see here. The accuser's family is poor, and the parents have a violent history that includes mutual accusations of abuse. Apart from the shoplifting incident, their legal dossier contains cases of small claims filed by retailers and a car company. The mother admits to having seen a psychiatrist even before she went through the agony of almost losing her son to cancer. Such needy, underprivileged families are convenient for a superstar prone to relationships with young boys. They are so flattered to be close to the flame of celebrity that they don't realize how easily they can be seared. As Jermaine and other Jackson supporters play the race card, oh yes, the race card was played back then, with invectives aimed at the authorities and white people in general, and with gushing assurances of Michael Jackson's purity and innocence, they never fail to mention that the mother's motive is unquestionably greed and manipulation. Jackson's criminal defense investigators, including a former member of the LAPD who once claimed a mental disability, are also intent on digging up every speck of dirt about the family that they can find. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. I'm going to pick this up again later. There's still a lot more to go over, but I think I'm making this a little too long, so I will be back.